I'm Christy Everett. I'm the Hampton Roads Director for Chesapeake Bay Foundation. Thank you all for being here. We are facing critical rising sea levels and frequent storm surges, making natural shoreline protection essential. Living shorelines improve water quality, reduce runoff pollution, and support native ecosystems. They create safe spaces for fish, birds, and other coastal species. Unlike hard structures, living shorelines adapt and recover from storms. Virginia prioritizes living shorelines for shoreline stabilization, local programs, and offer financial assistance to property owners. So thank you all for being here on such a critical topic and taking the time to learn more and discuss this issue. I want to do a special thank you to Planetary, CMA CGM, and Cox Communications for sponsoring the Climate Lecture Series. Thank you all so much. Tonight's program is recorded and streamed via Facebook Live, so you can nap for the next 30, 40 minutes and catch it again later when we send out the recording. Seriously, though, so if you do know people that might benefit, we will be sending out the recording as well as the slides after tonight, so you can share them with friends or colleagues. There's a QR code on your program. It might have been flashing up when you were first seated for questions. I've got a few questions prepared, but we want to hear from you. So please do scan your program for those questions. And before we start, I just want Ryan and Katie to hear a little bit of who they're speaking to. So I'm going to ask you this is the only thing you have to do for the next hour, so I'll make it easy. Raise your hand if you're a property owner interested in shoreline stabilization or treatment, or have had some kind of stabilization or treatment. A few of you, great, okay. Raise your hand if you're, and you might be this also as well, a property owner or a practitioner or someone in the conservation field, nonprofit, government, agency, industry. Okay, great. Any other category, you can just shout it out, hopefully relevant to tonight. What's that? Academic. Okay, thank you. That category that I forgot. Okay. Volunteer. I know a few volunteers are here. Yeah. We won't make you work tonight. We were just thanking you for helping. Maybe your picture's in one of these photographs. Well, great. We've got some great presentations lined up. I just want to start off with Katie and Ryan, just a minute or two about some opening remarks. So you want to share kind of what you're hoping to share about tonight?
Sure. I'm on.
Yeah.
Hi guys, so I'm Katie Grigsby, and I'm just going to kind of talk to you guys a little bit today about kind of a brief description on what a living shoreline is, and then Christy lied to you because I am going to make you guys do some pop quizzes a little bit during the presentation, so you guys do have to keep your brains on just a little bit. But just kind of hoping to kind of walk through kind of the site visit process and kind of how we determined what a living shoreline is and the best practice to kind of implement there. So, yeah.
I'm Ryan Walsh with the James River Association. Been working with Katie for a long time now on living shorelines. JRA is the convening member of the Living Shoreline Collaborative, or LSC. So I'm here to talk about our work with living shoreline, as well as other things that JRA does. For 10 years in a row, we've been the cleanest tributary to the Chesapeake Bay, and we're very proud of it. Yeah.
Great. So now Katie, you're going to present first. Let me introduce a little bit about Katie for those who are not volunteers that know her well from the field work. Katie was born and raised on Virginia's Eastern Shore, where her deep connection to nature inspired her work with the Chesapeake Bay Foundation. In 2018, she earned a master's degree in architectural studies and sustainable design, along with a graduate certificate in geographic information systems from the University of Florida. After graduating, she completed 3 internships with Chesapeake Bay Foundation, where she discovered her passion for integrating plants and animals into design. Recognizing the importance of formal education in environmental science for implementing effective restoration projects, she returned to school and obtained a Master of Arts in Environmental Science from William & Mary's Virginia Institute of Marine Science in 2023. Katie currently oversees CBF's Hampton Roads Urban Restoration Program, focusing on designing, permitting, implementing, monitoring, and maintaining green infrastructure projects in Hampton Roads. Welcome, Katie.
So hi, everybody. Yes, I'm Kati Grigsby, and I am the restoration coordinator here for the Chesapeake Bay Foundation. And like Christy said, I have the distinct pleasure for actually managing the Hampton Roads Urban Restoration Program here at CBF. And like she said, we focus on designing, permitting, implementing, and monitoring green infrastructure projects here in the Hampton Roads region. That's anywhere from rain gardens to bioswales, tree plantings, but a big part of what I do is actually designing and implementing living shorelines. It's actually kind of a passion project. Christy mentioned that I went to the Virginia Institute of Marine Science. I actually, when I was an intern here, somebody said to me, I was like an architecture student trying to figure out what I wanted to do in life, and somebody said to me, oysters are the architects of the marine environment, and that kind of was like a light bulb moment for me, and I was like, wow, oysters can actually be a medium that I can use to design, and that's just kind of essentially what living shorelines are. Living shorelines are kind of the creation and kind of stabilization of wetlands. Most of the time, living shorelines are kind of in an area that are privately owned, and they are oftentimes kind of just the idea of a living shoreline is basically just planting plants and putting oysters in. But the key and the reason why you go to school for so long is to kind of understand and read the marsh. But I'm going to kind of walk you guys through a little bit of a site evaluation, and then by the end of this, you guys are all going to be experts, and you guys don't actually have to go to 3 graduate schools, okay? So, what we actually do is the first step is, you know, somebody calls and says, hey, Katie, I kind of want to have a site visit. I'm kind of interested in doing a living shoreline. And so will you come out and do a site visit for me? And we actually use this feature called, it's a GNS survey tool. So, you know, like when you're going in, you're using Google Earth and your Google Maps, and it kind of tries to pinpoint where you are in like vicinity on the Earth kind of thing. Well, what it's doing is actually looking at satellites and trying to pinpoint where you are, and the accuracy is based off of like 10 to 20 feet where you are. Well, I wanted to have a higher accuracy, so this survey tool is actually called a bad elf, and when it was actually delivered here, Chris Gorey thought that it was actually a Christmas tool that he was supposed to put up for Christmas lights, but no, it's a nerdier thing. So it actually allows us to have a GPS accuracy of about 1 foot. So we are allowed to actually go out and actually use that survey tool to actually draw the living shoreline features while on site. So these are the different types of shoreline stabilization kind of features that you're looking at as you're actually doing a site evaluation. So you're looking at the subtitle. So what is there? Is there SAV, submerged aquatic vegetation? The tidal mud flats, are you seeing like oysters and crabs? The low marsh, spartina alterniflora, those types of things. The high marsh, what types of different vegetation that you're seeing there. The upper border, most of the time you're looking to see if there's Phragmites there, which is an invasive wetland plant. And then the upland above, which a lot of times in this area, the upland above is generally somebody's personal property. So it's a lawn or something like that. So yeah. But I wanted to really talk to you guys about ecosystem engineers. The one that I actually talk about all the time, and the reason, like, it's literally when you are actually going out and doing a site visit of a living shoreline, and you're like, I've done a site and I've done this project, the indicator that you've done a good job actually designing a living shoreline is if this wetland grass is actually growing and thriving. So if you've actually accomplished that this wetland grass is actually doing well and it's stabilizing and it's actually growing and kind of like colonizing a little bit, then you can actually say that you've designed this wetland pretty well. So spartina alterniflora is the most common wetland plant in the world. It grows at the mid-tide mark. So when you're actually doing a site visit, you want to look to see if spartina alterniflora is actually growing on the shoreline. So it actually grows. So there's a lady that was actually called Rachel Peabody at VMRC, and Ryan and I were actually kind of taught by her, and she says that spartina alterniflora likes to have its feet wet 2 times a day, so during each high tide, and then it completely drained out at low tide. So where spartina alterniflora grows at the lowest elevation is actually the lowest elevation that you actually want to actually backfill for your marsh to actually be successful. I know I just said a lot, but don't worry, I'm going to make you guys have a pop quiz, and you guys are going to have to figure that out later. And it does not grow below mid-tide. So let's say that you're actually sitting on this shoreline and you're actually doing a site visit. Don't pretend like people are not there. And you are actually trying to mark with, like you're out here with your bad elf, and you're trying to mark where mid-tide is. Where would you mark mid-tide? Say it. How would you mark mid-tide? Where would you walk to mark it? Yes, the edge of the Spartina right there. So that is the mid-tide mark right there. So what you're trying to do is that when you're designing and you're actually going out and doing a site visit, you're actually trying to mark where this elevation is, because that's the elevation that you want to hit to actually install your shoreline. That's the lowest elevation that you want to hit. So you guys have now marked your mid-tide mark. Oysters. Oysters are the backbone. They're the architects of the marine environment, like I said. The indicator if oysters are actually going to be successful on your shoreline, it's really not rocket science, is if oysters are currently growing on your shoreline. So if you see oysters that are currently growing on your shoreline, then you generally can predict that oyster restoration or an oyster sill product will actually be successful on your shoreline. There are other factors. If you don't see that, then you can actually do other scientific data. But the biggest indicator is if you see the presence of oysters as already present on the shoreline. A good rule of thumb also is that you don't want to build your oyster sill, so the sill structure, lower than mean low water. And there's a lot of different options that are out there for living shorelines and oysters. One of the products that I actually just started looking at is this basalt shell bag. It's actually made from basalt rock fiber, and it's an alternative to plastic. So I have a sample out here that you guys can actually come out and look at and feel. It feels like horsehair. It's really weird. So another pop quiz for you. You're back out here and you're doing a site visit for the shoreline. What questions, and you're trying to decide if an oyster sill is the right option for you. What questions are you asking yourself? Just say it. Are oysters present on the shoreline? Do you guys see oysters there? Actually, you see a plethora of oysters, and actually on the shoreline, it ended up being a somewhat of a design hazard because we actually had to put in a couple days to actually transplant the oysters that were within the project footprint out of the project footprint so we wouldn't actually harm the oysters. So it's a good thing to understand and actually kind of put into the design project planning and things. So if you were also going to map out where mean low water is, where would you guys put your line at? Where would you guys walk? Mean low water. So you don't want to, so this is the mean low water mark. So literally where water stops, kind of thing like that, where the mud flat kind of starts. So that's your mean low, so that is your furthest indicator of where you want to put your living shoreline. So you don't want to build past that point. There's a lot of different reasons, and a lot of them it has to do with permitting and those different types of things, but also it has to do with bottom type, also with sea level rise and all these different types of stuff. So when you're thinking about going below mean low water, you're kind of thinking a little bit more of a different permit design application. I find that wetland plants are just incredibly cool. To be honest, when you do a site visit, and any volunteer that has actually been out there with me, I geek out when I look at, like, I can name all the different plants and things like that. But I find it to be the coolest thing is that wetland plants actually will delineate for you where they want to grow and how they want to grow in the elevations and the conditions that you see. So Spartina alterniflora likes to grow from mid-tide and high tide kind of marks, so it will grow in that span. Above high tide is where the high marsh vegetation will grow. The high marsh vegetation, you'll start to see a bunch of different variety of wetland plants. You'll see fun stuff like Juncus vermerianus, which is black needle rush. You'll see different flowering species and different things like that. So you see a different variety, but oftentimes you'll see this very defined, delineated line between where the low marsh plants are growing and the high marsh plants are growing. And where that transition mark is actually where the high marsh and low marsh are, and that's the high tide mark. So, another pop quiz. Sorry about this. So if you were going to be marking, this is the last mark that you're actually out on your site visit, and you're going to be marking where mean high water is. Based on this photo, I've said spartinal alternifloras, the low marsh wetland plants, and now you have a bunch of different variety of wetland plants that are growing at a higher elevation. Where would you put your your high mark there? It would be a zigzag, right, Rogard? There you go. So you would walk along the vegetation line where spartinal alterniflora grows, and that would be your last indicator for your for high tide. And in truth, that is really the ultimate 3 things that I look for when I'm actually going out and doing a design. You have now officially graduated into ability to actually go out and do a site visit. So you can now go out and look at mean low water, mid tide, and mean high water. And using those 3 indicators, you can figure out your elevations, you can figure out your sill structure height, you can figure out all of the different types of things that you need. You can figure out the different oyster reefs that you want, all of the different features that you need to actually design a living shoreline properly. However, sea level rise does make things a little funky. So one of the coolest things about wetland vegetation is that they like to live in their own little stands. They don't necessarily like to live in their, they don't have, when you're looking at a garden that's at a house or something, you have a different plant that's implanted within the same vicinity of everybody. You will see that wetland vegetation likes to be in its own little stand by itself. You won't see a bunch of different variety in those stands. Well, what happens when you start to see spartinal alterniflora start to pop up in the high marsh area? Does anybody have an idea? Sea level rise is starting to come up, so the area that's high marsh is now being inundated too often, so your marsh is starting to actually migrate into your high marsh. So you're starting to see a sea level rise kind of indicator there. How cool is that? Not very cool for the property owner, but what I would like to showcase is that it's very, very important, though, when you consider living shorelines and everything like that, is that you want to make sure that you're not just designing for the shoreline, but you're looking at the whole tidal slope. So you're not stopping at the high tide mark, you're looking at the high marsh, and you're looking at the buffer, and you're looking at all these different types of things, because what you really want to do is that you want to design things that allow for this marsh migration to actually happen and allow for this vegetation to have a corridor to go as sea level rises start to happen. This property owner actually ended up this was a project that was done with the Elizabeth River Project, and they had this really interesting hedge of saltbush. And as you could see, it was a little unsightly on the back side of it. So they were like, well, why don't we just do a grass buffer on the other side and kind of soften that, because they didn't want to completely remove the saltbush, but they also, wanted to have a nicer feature that, allowed them to have a nicer transition. And these buffers, not only can you are surrendering some of your lawn to this buffer area, but it is allowing you to have a beautification aspect to it. So you don't necessarily have to have these massive trees, which we would like to have some trees that are in these buffers, but you can do different things like hibiscuses and all these kinds of other pretty features that allow for you to kind of have this design kind of element that sometimes is lacking in your living shoreline, so you have a little bit more creativity. So yeah. And that's it for me. So I hope you guys enjoyed your time, and here's Ryan.
Something.
If you all have any questions, there's one question there, so I know it works. But great presentation, Katie, and then we're going to have lots of questions and discussion for you. Ryan Walsh grew up in Southern Pines, North Carolina, where a lifelong passion for the outdoors began. Developed a deep appreciation for vital riverine and marine habitats by exploring barrier islands and salt marshes, becoming intimately familiar with the plants and animals that inhabit them. Move away, thank you. I think we're getting a little bit of feedback, sorry. No against Ryan, just the mic was playing off each other. Ryan earned a Bachelor's of Science in Marine Biology from University of North Carolina, Wilmington, and an AAS in Marine Technology from Cape Fear Community College. Since moving to Virginia, he has fallen in love with the James River and is committed to restoring it to a healthy, natural state. He's especially excited about the return of the breeding Atlantic sturgeon. Through his work, Ryan actively conserves tidewater habitats, combats sea level rise, and protects the tidal communities of the lower James. He proudly considers himself a James changer.
Can you guys hear me? Awesome. So I'm Ryan Walsh. I'm the Senior Coastal Restoration Manager for the James River Association. And I'm very happy to be here this evening. So James River Association, or JRA, is a nonprofit, and we're dedicated to conserving the entire James River watershed. Thank you. We provide a voice for the river and take action to promote conservation and responsible stewardship of its natural resources. So here's the shape of the James River watershed. You may be familiar with the larger Chesapeake Bay watershed. We're the southernmost waters that feed into the Chesapeake Bay. It's about 10,000 square miles, hosts 3 million Virginians, almost 25% of the state. And as I said earlier, it's been the cleanest tributary to the Chesapeake Bay for years now. Here's the area that I'm concerned about, the lower James watershed. So this is wherever the river and its tributaries are tidal. And that can be brackish towards the mouth of the bay, and some really cool ecosystems further west towards Richmond and Hopewell. It's a freshwater tidal ecosystem. JRA started almost 50 years ago, our 50th anniversary next year, and that's because of Hopewell, Virginia. There was a company there that was dumping an insecticide called Keepone into the river. Keepone is a persistent organic pollutant, which means it doesn't just break down naturally. And so it really poisoned the river for a long time. All fishing in the lower James was closed for 13 years. And that was one of the many things in the 70s that helped spur the Clean Water Act, and definitely spurred the creation of the James River Association. All right, so State of James today. So right now we're rocking a B. Our organization still has the hope of an A grade James River, and we're working really hard towards that. Every 2 years, so every odd year in a decade, we create a State of the James report. Here's our 2023 report. We're currently working on our 2025 report. So the river health is still a B. We're still working really hard towards that. We have a bunch of different indicators that are measured by other organizations and state agencies that show the health of organisms and pollutants going into the river, things like that. We're one of the most improved rivers in the country, and it's been a lot of work for a really long time, and I've got a bunch of really great coworkers that are really dedicated to this specific watershed. So if you live in tidewater, like in the peninsula or maybe in Norfolk or on the south side, you want to know if it's safe to go in the James River, we monitor those conditions over the course of the summer. We have jamesriverwatch.org. We have volunteers that go out every week. They take measurements, water quality measurements on Thursdays, and then on Fridays we're able to release the reports. So this shows bacterial levels, water temperature, water clarity, things like that. This is an old screen grab. Definitely check the water quality before you go swimming. If there's a really big storm in the river, maybe wait 48 hours or a few tidal flushes to really go in, but generally the James River is safe to go in. All right, so I work really closely with living shorelines like Katie does. Katie did a really great job explaining what living shorelines are, so I won't belabor the point too much. Living shorelines are just a resilient, nature-based solution to erosion. So the primary purpose that you install living shorelines is to combat erosion. It has all these wonderful side benefits. They increase the quality of the water, it provides habitat for native wildlife, and really reduces the amount of nitrogen, phosphorus, and suspended sediment in the water column. I like to think there's 4 different components to a living shoreline. This is a screen grab from Resilient Hampton. The city of Hampton's been really forward-thinking with their coastal resilience. So you have your sill, which, do I have, here we go, yeah. So your sill is the structure placed at mean low water. You can see the oysters on it, these are oyster castles. And this holds back your sand fill that fills in the erosion area. Then you put in native wetland plants that anchor that sand fill in. And then the last structure that's not in this graphic is actually probably one of the more important ones. It's goose exclusion fencing. Because if you put in these nice, tender, young plants, that is like ringing a dinner bell for Canada geese. So unless you really, really want to replan a project multiple times, it's probably important just to keep the geese out for a while. This is a long-standing partner of James River Association, Elizabeth River Project, Chesapeake Bay Foundation, also the Living Shoreline Collaborative. This is Jim Cahoon of Bay Environmental. So this is just Living Shoreline, where you can see there's been a lot of erosion at the beginning, brand new constructed product, and then after a few years of establishment, just like how green and lush it is and how it's really locked that sand into place. There's a few different things you can make sills out of, from low energy to high energy. Lowest energy is a coconut fiber core log right here. And then we have these 1/3 bushel oyster shell bags. These are oyster shells that are recycled from seafood restaurants. And then a little higher energy still, we have these awesome oyster castles. There's a researcher at VIMS who's been around for many, many years now, but he likes to call all these different kinds of structures oyster gizmos. A lot of NGOs in the area, we really like oyster castles because they can be transported by volunteers, they're interlocking, and they become colonized by oysters really quickly. Higher energy still, this is one of my projects. So these are like really, really heavy duty oyster castles. These are called exoforms. They're made by an outfit based out of Raleigh, North Carolina called Matrix. And these are 3D printed oyster structures, and each one weighs 2,200 pounds. So a little too heavy for volunteers to move in a wheelbarrow, so hence the excavator that was really gingerly taken down to the shoreline. And it was really cool to see this go in. It's really cool to see this project take root. Each of these shapes were each made by like a model that the organization created. Something that the James River Association and the Living Shoreline Collaborative that we convene that's really important to us is creating a mosaic approach to living shorelines. So that's providing benefits to every single community that is adjacent to the shoreline area. So you have your subtidal, subaqueous zone, so your submerged aquatic vegetation, your oysters, your fish, the intertidal zone where water comes and goes, and then above that, your riparian buffer. So each of these 3 things in concert with each other will provide really tremendous benefits to native wildlife and also clean the water. We love living shorelines because, we think they look really cool. Like, it's not just like a concrete bulkhead or a seawall or a rock revetment. It's like a living, breathing thing that's like moving and changing all the time. These things are resilient. They can be hit by like a storm or a hurricane. The grasses will stand back up. The oysters have everything locked in. It's just a really cool system. And in addition to like all the erosion control benefit that they provide, they also provide like a lot of like ecosystem services and habitat benefit, which is just fantastic to see. As I mentioned earlier, JRA is the convening member of the Living Shoreline Collaborative. This is a big group of all these different partners, really eclectic and diverse people coming together that want to increase the number of living shorelines within the lower James River watershed. CBF is a wonderful partner. We also work with a bunch of localities, other NGOs, researchers, committed volunteers, people from communities, and marine contractors that all want to see living shorelines really come up in the lower James. Every year we have 2 general meetings in person and 1 annual summit. Our next annual summit will be held at the Mariners Museum on October 9th. That's going to be an all-day event. We're going to have several Indian tribes from Tidewater come and talk about their work with living shorelines and their need for resilient practices. And then we'll have an afternoon field visit as well. We're going to check out a really cool project that injects like purified sewage water down to the Yorktown aquifer. So that's really cool to see. My day-to-day job, I oversee a homeowner cost share program that the James River Association has. So we have funding from different grants that can fund homeowner projects. We'll pay for 75% of installation of a living shoreline, and I provide free site visits, free project design, free permitting assistance. We do all maintenance for the first 3 years. I've done just under 6,000 linear feet of shorelines altogether. That's me shoveling sand during COVID at one of the Elizabeth River Project living shorelines. It's been really great. As Katie mentioned, I learned from Rachel Peabody, who started VMRC, was at the Elizabeth River Project for a while, and went back in a very expanded role at VMRC. So it's been really cool to learn from experts over time. One of our showcase projects is this agricultural living shoreline at Berkeley Plantation. This is in Charles City County, so this is a much different area than where we are right now. This is all freshwater tidal. So there's no salt in the water right here, much different marsh. Many more species live in a freshwater marsh than a tidal brackish water marsh, so that's really cool. This is an active agricultural field where we worked with Colonial Soil and Water Conservation District, Virginia Department of Environmental Quality, and the Department of Conservation Recreation's Shoreline Erosion Advisory Service to get this project in. It took a long time to figure out how to get everything approved and permitted, but we're really proud of this project. It's 1,500 linear feet long. We put 64,000 square feet of plants in, and just lots of plants, lots of volunteers, lots of partners that were all committed to getting this in together. We got our ribbon cutting about a year ago, and it's just really cool to see this come in and just how it cleans the water. Something else that the James River Association did with that grant that installed the Berkeley Plantation living shoreline is we were working with Virginia Institute of Marine Science to create this shoreline monitoring app. So what is a great way, how can all these partners come together and make sure that we're monitoring our projects so that they're successful? So I won't say it's the easiest thing to use. It's you definitely need some good handful of college students or grad students with you. But it's going out in the marsh and using a bad elf to go take measurements periodically, make sure that your plants are taking, and that making sure that everything is coming in like it should. Oh no, I'm missing other pictures. Something else that the Living Shoreline Collaborative does is we work with the Chesapeake Bay landscape professionals and another partnering organization called Wetlands Watch that's based out of Norfolk, training people to get these projects in. So we have this tremendous need to install living shorelines, and we want a lot of them, so we need people to actually put them in. Right now there's more potential projects than there are dedicated professionals to work and install these. So something else that the Living Shoreline Collaborative does, I've taught at this, Katie's taught at this, a bunch of our friends and partners have, working to train on once or twice a year marine contractors who are interested in this field and would like to see more of these things go in. Oh, here's another picture. So here's Katie showing off some what Scott Hardaway would call oyster gizmos. I see some reef defenders, some reef balls, some oyster tables, some basalt shell bags, and some other things on the. Oh, they come in one at a time. Sorry. So here we have students within the Chesapeake Bay Landscape Professional thing planting. So these orange things are really fun. They're called dibble bars. Make a little hole, put a plant in a hole, go on and do another one. Here's a awesome marine contractor on the Eastern Shore named Grimes, showing how to take measurements and really survey your planting area. And here is Justin Schaefer from the city of Norfolk telling people how to conduct a site visit and what to look for when they want to install a living shoreline. Here's some other pictures from some of our installations. Partners from like the Elizabeth River Project, my awesome summer intern, JP Ayala, who has helped me plant several thousand plants this summer. And I don't recognize this. I think I stole it from ERP or I stole it from you, Katie. So. All right, and we're happy to answer any questions.
There's been some great questions submitted, but keep them coming. I think we're going to have plenty of time. Wonderful presentations. Thank you all both. I did just want to add as well, you mentioned the funding sources, cost share funding, Elizabeth River Project, James River Association. The Virginia Conservation Assistance Program, or known as VCAP, I think there's $1.5 million in the state fund for that, and it's administered by the soil and water conservation districts throughout the state. There are certain localities in Hampton Roads that don't have a soil and water conservation district, but they set up a partnership. And now Hampton, City of Hampton has a partnership. If you're in the city of Hampton and you want a living shoreline, we can get you the contact information of the wetland sports staff who can look to see if cost share might be an option. And similarly in Newport News, they just this summer established a relationship where they are now going to be eligible to partially fund through the VCAP program, living shorelines, as well as other practices. And then just today, I got an email from City of Norfolk, and they're now have VCAP as well. So there's additional funding sources. We're happy to share more about that. But if you know others that are interested, I think it's really important and really critical. So I'll start off with a few questions, and then we'll go to the audience Q&A. Really great questions submitted. What policy changes could help expand the use of living shorelines?
There's already a big one in 2021. Senate Bill 776 was signed into law, which made living shorelines the default erosion control option in the Commonwealth of Virginia. So that means that if you want to control your erosion and you live in a tidal ecosystem, you must first prove that a living shoreline is not scientifically possible. The people who prove that a living shoreline is scientifically possible or not, that's from VIMS, Virginia Institute of Marine Science. So there's already, some really good resources in place that really encourage living shorelines to go in. That being said, it still takes a while to get these projects funded. So anything that can, or not funded, permitted. So anything that can work to get these projects permitted, from the regulatory process, would definitely be greatly appreciated. Sometimes you're looking at a 3 to 6 month window just to get permission to install a project. So anything that could speed that process up, I think would be definitely welcomed.
Ryan said it best. I think that the permitting process, a lot of times it has to do with staffing issues with the permitters and everything like that, and understanding, they just have a ton of stuff that's on their plate and everything. But in addition, there's inconsistencies, and especially with going to different localities, and so what will kind of be in Norfolk will not be exactly the same conditions that you need to submit for a permit in Hampton or Newport News, and so it does make things a little tougher for homeowners. I think that the permitting process is a little daunting for them, especially if you don't have somebody that's helping you through that process. But yeah, that's probably a bigger thing. I think that permitting is never going to be everybody's cup of tea, so unfortunately.
Great. I'm going to just abandon all of my questions because your questions are so much better than mine. So kudos for the for the great questions. So I'll switch over to what's been submitted. What local companies would you recommend to improve, either construct or improve a living shoreline?
So with the James River Association, we're set up a little different than other NGOs within Tidewater. We really rely on marine contractors to put our projects in. So we have a vetted pool that I send projects out to bid for whenever we have a homeowner project that needs to go in. Some good ones that we've worked with: Environmental Quality Resources, Native Shorelines, Bay Environmental is really good, and Seaboard Marine are all really good ones.
I would also just echo that. EQR actually designed this thing that we actually used at the burner project, which was actually a sand thrower, which literally it has a hopper of sand, and then it just shoots the sand out onto the shoreline. So it actually reduced our amount of actually pushing sand by, I think, if we had to move the 150 tons of sand that we were supposed to move, it was going to take us 2.5 months to actually move that by wheelbarrow, and they did that in 24 hours, and so without actually stepping on a wetland. So that was a very cool and interesting kind of process too. So good to work with contractors to be kind of innovative in that solution too.
How did you decide what types of nature-based solutions, how do you decide what type of nature-based solutions will work best for which location?
For us, it really depends on the fetch of the project. That's like a Mean Girls reference. Fetches aren't going to happen. Fetch is the distance that wind blows over water, so that's an analog for how much wave energy that a site can have. So how big or small you want your sill, that structure that holds the sand down that's placed at near water, really depends on how much wave energy there's going to be. In a really sheltered tributary, like way back here in the Lynnhaven River, probably use a coconut fiber core log, something that's only going to stick around for a couple growing seasons and then just biodegrade and go away. In other places where you could have like a nor'easter or a tropical storm or hurricane hitting it, you'll really want something that will want to recruit a lot of oysters and anchor those into place. And really, in places where an oyster doesn't work, like my agricultural project way up on the freshwater part of the James, we needed to use granite. So really big stone that will absorb storm energy and really protect the sandful in the planting area.
It also depends on the sill height. So oyster castles are modular, so you have the ability to kind of fit to the project. Like if you, let's say that you need to make the oyster castle 2 high, or 3 high, or 4 high, so it allows you to kind of fit to the specific design of that shoreline. Some structures are only able to be 1 foot high, or some oyster or core logs are only 12 inches, or those different types of things. And so that's depending on that elevation that you need to reach in order for your Spartina to actually grow, is based off of kind of what the sill structure that you need to have there as well. Also, as I told you guys, if oysters are not growing on the shoreline, and that's not, then I probably wouldn't say that you would want to put an oyster structure out there. So.
Great, and I did want to stop too. Karen and Forche's here from Lynnhaven River Now. I know there might be a few other folks in too. And Lynnhaven River Now does living shorelines and has a cost share program as well, I believe, in addition to VCAP.
How many people live in Virginia Beach? Most.
Yeah.
So I live in Lynnhaven River now, and we have done, 15, 20 living shoreline projects in the Lynnhaven River. And a lot of them are through the VCAP program that Chrissy mentioned. Virginia Beach also has its own program called VCAP, where the city of Virginia Beach puts funding into the VCAP program to supplement the funds that come from the state. advise you on whether a living shoreline is appropriate for your site and how, what the components of that living shoreline will be, and help you go through the DCAP application project, our application, because that's not something probably any of you have done before. We've done it lots of times, so we can help you through that application and any permitting that is required for your site. And then we provide volunteers to come out and help build the shorelines to keep the costs down for residents. So let us know the lead person on our staff for these projects is Vince Bowers. So it's Vince at, and don't send him 100 emails tomorrow, please. It's vince@lrnav.org. And we are a part of the collaborative. I didn't see our logo up there, but we are a part of the collaborative. And I think Vince is actually going to be teaching a class in the next workshop and doing a session on mussel restoration.
Yeah, Ben should be working with Wetlands Watch. Sorry, I missed your logo. I pulled that slide from a while ago. But yeah, whenever
But
knows
let
a
us
good
know
plan.
if we can help you.
Thank you, Karen. Sorry to put you on the spot, but really appreciate you sharing the info. That's great, yeah. What would be the first step for a contractor to make efforts towards education and certification to build living shorelines?
Join the Chesapeake Bay Landscaping Professionals Living Shoreline course. There is one that's coming up this coming fall, and they try to have one in the spring and fall every single year. I also say that if you're interested in a contractor and want to come out and do a living shoreline, the best way to learn how to do a living shoreline is to come out and volunteer to do one. So I think it's a little bit more, I actually am surprised all the time of how many people that actually design these structures and do these different types, but have never touched them. So that is something that, you know, physically understanding the nuances of actually, you know, installing them and making sure that they're sitting correctly and all those kinds of things is very important for the longevity of the project.
Yeah, I'd second what Katie said. There's going to be a course taught this fall, Chesapeake Bay Landscape Professionals. It's a living shoreline certificate, so it's going to be really cool. I think it's going to be held on the northern neck, so a little bit of a hike from here, but they move around within Chesapeake Bay watershed a couple times a year.
If you have a bulkheaded property, what other kind of structures are more environmentally friendly in place of the wooden bulkhead?
Certainly a living shoreline would be more environmentally friendly. That being said, like if the bulkhead isn't like absolutely failing or you know still performing well, you know, like I think keeping it in place would probably be fine. But if you would like to replace that, like you could certainly remove that bulkhead and you know grade that bank back so it'd be more resilient, so it'd be more self-healing during a storm. So like a quote that I really like is there's a living shorelines researcher named Bhaskar Subramanian who used to be with Maryland's Department of Natural Resources, was that a bulkhead or a revetment, like the best day of its life is the day that it's put in. And every day after that, like it's slowly degrading and will eventually fail. And the worst day of living shoreline's life is the first day it's put in. And then every day after that, it's going to grow bigger and get stronger.
It's a great way of putting it. Let's say, though, you have a nice bulkhead that is currently just been installed in the last 5 years. It's not failing or anything like that, but you want to add some environmentally friendly practices onto it. So if you're currently mowing down to the edge of your bulkhead, then if you move that mow line back and just plant a high marsh vegetation along that, not only will you be environmentally friendly, but that turf grass does not have very deep roots. So oftentimes, my parents, we had a bulkhead when I was growing up, and I would find myself that I would like run along the bulkhead, and then I would like fall into a pit that wasn't behind the bulkhead. And what was end up happening was it wasn't those grass roots weren't actually holding that sediment in, and it was actually coming out underneath it. And so if you have like this kind of hardier vegetation, native vegetation that has roots that are 3 to 4 feet long down into the ground, then it'll actually hold that sediment there a lot longer. It'll actually improve the life of that. let's say that you have a Spartina wetland that's actually in front of your boat. A lot of times I see that actually over here. So potentially if you wanted, that is also protecting and ensuring that your infrastructure is actually going to withstand kind of other additional things. Then you could potentially protect that toe of that marsh with, a lower energy setting something or things. There's a lot of different features that you can add to your shoreline that can make it a little bit more environmentally friendly.
With the pullback of federal government funding, how is that affecting resources for living shoreline and restoration projects? And are there paths forward that can address any changes?
Oh, man, that's an easy one. It's definitely stretched funding a little thin, that like a lack of federal funding that particularly puts a strain on state resources, like if the federal government isn't picking up a lot, the state has to fill that gap if they can. So it definitely makes it harder. There's, really good state resources that are available, particularly VCAP. This is a program that's funded by the General Assembly on an annual basis. This allows homeowners to reach out to their local soil and water conservation district. Some localities that have not traditionally been a part of a soil and water conservation district can now use this funding to put in, green practices or resilient practices. I will say if you live in the lower James River watershed, so, anywhere between, say, like Prince George and Henrico County in the west, all the way to Hampton and like the Wilson area in Norfolk in the east, you can certainly utilize JRA's homeowner cost share program. So we have funding guaranteed through the end of next year, and we're likely going to get an extension to have that through the end of 2027. But we're able to, fund 75% of the installation for a living shoreline. We provide free site visits. We frequently pair homeowners with engineers from the Department of Conservation and Recreation's Shoreline Erosion Advisory Service, which is also a free resource to anyone here in the state. If you have property that's experiencing erosion, you can reach out to that office and they'll send someone out to come check out what's going on and give you an answer why. But our cost share program is well funded for right now, but I do want to recognize it's within like pretty limited geographical areas, only within the lower James.
I will just echo what Ryan said, but I will say that Ryan and I are currently, the Living Shoreline Collaborative is currently funded by the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, and so that is a federally funded thing, and so we are currently still waiting to see if that is going to be potentially going to help us fund our next couple years of projects, and so anxiously waiting that call.
We've been told that our funding is not in jeopardy. We're just patiently waiting for it to be released to us.
Yeah.
The last question, I'll make a little lighter note. Are there flowering plants that I can plant in my marsh to make it more beautiful and diverse?
Yes. So your low marsh wetland vegetation is going to have a little bit of a limited plant palette. It's not going to have as much of a variety that you can actually do in there. Some at a higher limit, you can have some sea lavender, which is really pretty and purple. It looks like it has those different types of things. There's marsh hibiscuses, there's seaside tansies. Honestly, if you just walk Pleasure House Point here, then you can actually see a bunch of blooming flowers that are right now, which is a really good I love when you kind of walk through like natural areas that are, kind of doing what nature does, and you can kind of take the examples of them and kind of be like, okay, well that's where that's growing on that like tidal slope, and there's a ton of different other kind of options. Ryan, with the freshwater wetland, has a lot more of a different plant palette and a lot more variety that you can plant in those areas as well. So.
Yeah, that was like 30 different species, different hibiscuses. There's multiple, really showy hibiscuses that live in marshes in Virginia. Irises, swamp milkweed, northern wild rice, which is, historically very important plant to, native peoples here. And it's really cool, but you can grow in different areas.
And I think I see Kevin Du Bois in the back, right? Who did a flowering plant guide years ago, and I'm sure it's still available somewhere. People want to see some of those. Okay. Just so we're going to hear, Lynn Haven River now also has a brochure highlighting those as well. Correct? Okay, great. Okay, great. And Karen will be around for a few minutes, or Kevin was. Okay, great. Any closing comments from Katie or Ryan?
If you thought tonight was interesting, you'd like to learn more about living shorelines, October 9th, I believe it's a Wednesday, Newport News, we have our Living Shoreline Collaborative Summit. It'll be held at the Mariners Museum. It's going to be a really cool all-day event. If you want to learn more about this and become connected with people who are really passionate about living shorelines, it's really cool. So look for that. Information about that and JRA's cost share program can be found at jamesrivershorelines.org.
I just wanted to also mention, as Ryan mentioned, the worst day of a living shoreline is the first day that it's been done. So, but a lot of times, these projects are like gardens. They require, in their first couple of years, they require a little bit of maintenance and things. And so, and in addition, rain gardens and all these other kinds of stormwater wetlands require maintenance and monitoring and all these kinds of a little bit of nuanced things. And so we work really hard. My team back there, who is gossiping back there, is we will be doing maintenance and monitoring this coming fall, which will be doing some volunteer opportunities that we will need people out there. So it'll be every Friday from 9 to noon, starting in September all the way until the end of October, November area, where we'll be hitting all of our existing restoration projects for doing some maintenance and monitoring. So please come out if you want to learn a little bit more. The best way to learn is to get your hands dirty.
Everyone is smiling in the volunteer pictures, as you saw, so it is fun.
And I just have one last thing to say. If you want to go quickly, you can go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
Yeah.
On that note, let's give these guys a round of applause. Yeah. So a few housekeeping notes. We've talked a lot about policy, programs, funding, government funding sources that affect these conservation programs. So I want to turn it to Lisa Renee Jennings, our Hampton Roads Advocacy Manager, just to make a quick plug of what's happening this fall.
Let me put this up a little bit. Thanks for coming out, everyone. As Christy mentioned, I do advocacy. The department that Katie and I work in is called Advocacy and Restoration, and there's obvious reasons for that. It's two sides of a coin, right? You can join my team very easily. We created some postcards for you tonight. You may know an election is coming. You may have heard. It's an election every year in Virginia, for good or bad. And we have 5 questions if you run into a candidate, if you're looking on a website of a candidate. We have a governor's election, and all the House members are up for election this year. Super easy to just ask them these 5 questions. And I'm going to read you number 1, super pertinent for this evening. Ask your candidate if they will restore and protect our waterways and wetlands for fish, wildlife, and people. So these are available for you out on the desk and actually in 2 places outside, and I have them in my hand. So again, thank you for coming out. And the Bay can't speak up, but you certainly can. Thank you.
Thank you all so much for being here. We had about 115 people registered. 60, 70 are here, and that's you all. So I'm very impressed that you attempted traffic and made the time and, skipped dinner or whatever you did to get here and be here. Really appreciate your time. We do have an evaluation. We want to hear what you thought. So I believe it's on your program. If you didn't get one, there's some out there, and somebody will collect them out there. Also as well, the next lecture, September 24th. Same location, same time, building a resilient future with policy partners. We have Delegate Hernandez, Senator Williams-Graves, and Delegate Bloxham coming to speak. So we can ask them some of the questions Lisa Renee mentioned of there's changes happening, particularly on the federal front. What's Virginia going to do, this General Assembly? And they really do want to hear from you. Then following that, we're going to go back to the water and look at how the effects of climate are on fish for Chesapeake Bay and its waterways. And then November 12th, we have Jeremy Hoffman with Groundworks USA, talking about heat islands, climate. He's one of the authors of the IPCC regional report. So one of a real expert, an incredible communicator on how climate's affecting particularly Virginia, our region, and what we can do about it. So hope to see you all back. Thank you for being here. Thanks for the time and your support of our waterways. Good night.